I can't get my music. How's that funny? Yeah, my countdown. Hi, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Redemption Thursdays with Rabbi Pinchas Winston. I'm Yehuda Shamroff of the Miriam Project Geula Hour, Josh Wander of the Bring Them Home and Make Them Make Aliyah and Israel Torah all rolled up into one. He's a rabbi, he's a tour guide, he's an amazing advocate for Israel. He usually joins us, but he hasn't in a while because he's busy recruiting people to come to Israel. So please contact his website too, israeltorah.org. Weekly, we try to get Rabbi Winston, and we're very successful often to get him to bring his beautiful and amazing and deep Torah to us to help us prepare for the Geula Shalema. And this week's topic is a continuation of last week, In Search of My True Self, which was appropriate, as Rabbi mentioned last week in Lech Lecha, because Hashem told Avraham Avinu to go into yourself. And so let's learn further on how we can go into ourselves and prepare for the Geula. Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to just start with the material and I'm going to read it because I find if I don't, I just go all over the place and nothing is unnecessary. It's all important, but it's important to have a structure. So, and I'll just explain these as we go along. The material is available. If anybody wants to ask me for it, just let me know and I'll be happy to send it to you. Okay, so self-identification is everything in life. You have to know who you are in essence, which is difficult at first because we appear to ourselves throughout life as a combination of things. That's the first thing that you have to know, first thing to understand, that we don't think about this very much because it's just it's a natural process, especially if you're up in the Western world, but in any world for that matter, even in the Torah world, where there is an emphasis on knowing truth and living by truth, things like that. But from the moment you're born, I mean, the very fact that people, who does he look like? Who does she look like? Who does she, what he had their characteristics, your eyes, and all that. Give the kid a chance to grow up and be himself or herself. But it's automatically we start to impose upon children from a very young age layers of personality, layers of appearance, not just physical but spiritual as well. And I mean, some of it's just naturally, you can't, suppress it completely. Otherwise, then there's a reaction. Obviously, that's what happens in societies where they do things like that. But nonetheless, layers start to become piled on from a very young age. And you look in the mirror and you see something, and how you identify yourself, how you look at yourself, how you perceive yourself, is going to direct how you're going to live your life and the kind of life you're going to live, and ultimately the kind of relationship you're going to have with God. And that's everything. It's obviously there's a war going on, there's politics, there's economics, there's history, there's geography, you name it. There's a billion topics out there to talk about, look at, and articles to read. It's just ongoing how much information there is to be exposed to and to learn and to absorb as much as possible, but the reality is that all of it is helpful, and also it's a distraction away from the main reason why we're here. It's kind of hard. I mean, until you learn about this, until you start to focus on it, it's not your focus at all. And it's an amazing thing how easy it is to get into a pattern of living and approach life a specific certain way, because that's what everybody else is doing, and that's the way things seem to flow and become a part of that. And people live and they die, and most people have no idea or have very little idea of who they are their entire life, especially if you don't take the time. And I've mentioned before, and we'll come back to it later on, about how after death, that's the question that they're going to ask. Who were you? Did you know who you were? And it sounds like a simple answer, but it's not. It's very complicated because there's layers to peel back. And in modern society, you have people going out east to find themselves, to the Himalayas, the mountains, different places, to separate themselves from society. And there's ends to that. I mean, meditation allows you to do that sitting in one spot, but But even with meditation is more about becoming centered, more to have peace of mind, not necessarily to get to the essence of who you are, because most people don't even know what that essence is. And it means having to live your life with a stranger, and not the ones outside of you, but the ones inside of you. And it affects our decision making and our level of morality, and how we're going to ultimately be able to relate to God. And that's key to everything. That's key to the world to come. That's key to the quality of life in this world now, even if you don't know that, even though you don't sense that. But it's just one of those things. I mean, how many times, if you happen to do kiruv and you have to talk to, happen to talk to Baal Jew, you have your Shabbos table and you talk to them, and they talk about how before they became religious, religion seemed like the most outdated, unnecessary thing in the world, and they thought they were living the dream. They thought they were living the kind of life that they would always want to live, having no idea. I've had people tell me that, when I looked at people keeping Shabbos from the outside, I thought to myself, what a waste of time. What a way to use the weekend. Now that I finally understand what Shabbos is all about and I can connect to it and use it the proper way, I can't imagine how I lived without Shabbos. I can't imagine how I thought I was even living. And this is what the Gemara said. The Gemara says that tzaddikim, even after they die, are still living, which is why it's called Chayes Sarah. One of the reasons why it's called Chayes Sarah, because even after they go, they leave this world, not just the legacy, but the reality stays beyond. But Rishoyim, evil people, and evil can be a very specific term or can be a very general term. And it says even while they're still living, they're considered to be dead, even though they have lots of life and exuberance. They're involved in activities and sports and whatever, you name it. They're the cover of magazines and all that. But from God's perspective, He's the creator. He's the final say in all of this. That can still be called a living death. We're getting ahead of ourselves over here, but that's the first thing. So he says, Shlomo HaMelech wrote, "There is no righteous man on earth who does good and does not sin." It's a famous pasuk from Koheles, meaning that it's impossible even for the most righteous person not to make a mistake at some point in time, go off track a little bit. They'll come back right away and they'll realize their mistake and they'll do they'll tshuva for it. But it's impossible to be perfect as a human being. But you got to try, right? But the difference between a tzaddik and a rasha is that the tzaddik, the righteous person, distinguishes between himself and his yetzer hara, and that's really everything. Because that's who we are. There's two component parts. There's the body and there's the soul. And the first page of Shar HaGilgulim says very specifically that you have to know from the beginning, from the outset, you are not your body. Your body is to your soul, what your clothing is to your body. Your body, even though clothing make the man, so to speak, that it's not really making the man. It just makes you feel better about who you are. It's just an expression. It's not you. You put on the clothing, take off the clothing, change the clothing, and even change the style of clothing. It's not you. We know that. We accept that. Even your car, even if you're into cars and into fancy houses and things like that, come on, deep down inside this is not you. It helps to make you feel better about yourself, but it's not you. You don't say, hey, here's another part of me, the upstairs floor. No, it's external to me. But the body is more difficult. It's more difficult to see that because the body lives. We see bodies. We talk to bodies. We look in the mirror and we see a body. When was the last time you saw a soul? And I'm not talking about a fish or the bottom of your shoes. The real one, the inside one. It's invisible. It's a ghost. You can't see it. It's spiritual. We only see it vis-a-vis the body. But it's like someone who goes up on stage and takes credit for a project that they're just representing. They didn't do anything. They're just taking credit for it. That's what the body's doing. The body's taking credit for life. And all, I mean, there's no question that the body can take responsibility for some, and should take responsibility for some things, because it's a driving force behind the yetzer hara. Again, we'll get to that, B'ezras Hashem. Simple example, one of my favorite, that shows this idea, right? The Chavas Chaim, he was well into his 80s, and he got up one morning, and as he got up one morning, so all of a sudden, his yetzer hara says to him, come on. It's like you've been doing this all of your life. You're an old man now. Surely at this stage of your life, you're allowed to sleep in 1 day, 2 days. You don't have to get up early every single morning. So go back to bed. Now, most of us at that time would probably hit the snooze button. Most of us would go back to bed thinking that's our voice. Now, the Chafetz Chaim, he knows who's who. And the Chafetz Chaim said back to his Yetzer Hara, listen, if you're up this early in the morning, there's no reason why I shouldn't be up this early in the morning. Now, if you had been in the Chafetz Chaim's house when he woke up in the morning, this was going, would you have heard him talk to his Yetzer Hara? No, maybe he did. I can't say for sure he didn't, but let's assume that he didn't. So then what is this talking about? This is all a mashal? No, this was going inside of his head. He gets up in the morning like the rest of us, except he's getting up early. And you know what it's like? How many times have you set your alarm clock the night before? I'm going to get up earlier tomorrow morning because I never have enough time to get ready for work. So, for davening and things like that. So I'm going to get up a little bit earlier and maybe I'll go to the base medrash and I'll learn for 20 minutes before davening. What a lovely idea. And you're feeling all excited and pumped up to go do it because right now, as you're setting your alarm clock, it's the end of the day. You might be tired, but you're wide awake. Your body is not yet in sleep mode. It wants to be, but it's not there yet. So you feel it's possible. It's within your reach. And then you go to bed and you sleep for 6, 7, 8 hours. And you wake up the next morning and it feels like someone in the middle of the night has put another body and maybe 2 more on top of yours, pinning you down. It's so hard to move. Your body has no energy. And a voice inside says, let's sleep in. Let's sleep in. And, it's comfortable. And if it's a cold morning, there's even more justification. It's very hard. What about that resolve you had the night before? It was real. What about now? Still real. But the overriding feeling of the goof, of the body, of the tzahar, it's so powerful because the body has that in it. When it's relaxed, it's really relaxed. You have to fight back. So the Chafetz Chaim, he understood that wasn't what he really wanted to do. My Rosh Hashiva of Noach Weinberg used to always say to us the entire day, you just drill this all the time. Are you doing what you want to do, or are you doing what you feel like doing? And of course, in the beginning, we thought they were the same thing. How could they not be the same thing? I mean, what I feel like doing is what I want to do. I feel like not, doing something important. So that's what I want. No, but it's not true. You ask a person, right? I hear it. You're too tired, right? You don't want to get up. I understand. You agreed to do this thing, but now you're feeling that you have no energy. But if you could, would you? Would you want to? Do you wish you had the energy? Yeah, I do. Well, then you want to do it. You just don't feel like doing it. And that's when you realize there's these two forces. As when someone was learning how to daven for the first time, their first real Rosh Hashanah, after becoming religious, and they were in yeshiva, and they had their first Rosh Hashanah, and they thought, wow, here's my chance to actually pray to God and do it right, and halachically and the whole thing. And it didn't take very long to become very distraught because everybody around him was already used to it and already had in mind what to do, and they were getting into it, and he was having a difficult time connecting and relating because it just wasn't clicking yet. It takes time to get into that mode unless you're already doing it. And he got so frustrated, he actually got up and walked out of shul, sat down outside, and literally felt like ripping his hair up because he was so frustrated. Why can't I feel something? But he had this fantastic realization. He said to God, listen, I don't feel, I don't even really want right now to daven to you. I don't think. Otherwise, he says, but I want to daven to you. And if I don't want to daven to you, then I want to daven to you. But somewhere in there is a want. And that's what a tzaddik knows. They don't have to go through all that. They already understand it. They know the difference between their panemius, their soul, the inside, and that's who they are in essence. That's the Rizal says. You're your soul. That soul is all want. It's all ratzon. It's all will. It's what you're driven to do from the time that your soul was created before you're even born. This time, the previous time, even came into the world. But it gets buried over in bodily instinct. And you see, the world is doing crazy stuff. People are fighting for causes that don't make sense. They're endangering others in ways that just not right. but they think it's what they want to do because it's what they feel like doing. They don't understand. And that's why a lot of times they get stopped, and they get trouble for it. A lot of times, what was I doing? What was I thinking? How many times you people, what was I thinking? Well, you were thinking that's what you wanted to do. Now you found that it's not true. It's like the child whose mother says, don't take a cookie from that cookie jar without permission. And he can't hold himself back, and his mother's not around, so he decides to take a cookie. He takes the risk, and his mother happens to walk at exactly at that moment, and she calls it his name, and he freezes. And as he's standing there with a cookie in his hand, guilty, no way to get out of it, knowing he's going to get punished for this, a little voice says, what were we thinking? What were we thinking? Like, did we really want that badly to be in the situation right now? How many times you find yourself in a situation, you say to yourself, well, like, why? Why did I take that chance? Well, I thought it's what I wanted to do. Turns out it wasn't. And that's what a tzaddik knows. A tzaddik can distinguish that. The Chafetz Chaim, this short little story. He understood that feeling he has that's coming from inside of him is not him. Don't get confused. And we'll come back to that later on, B'ezras Hashem. So there are thoughts that a person has that please them and others that are disturbing. Thoughts they relate to and others that they reject. A person could mistakenly think, if disturbing ideas come from my brain, they must be a part of who I am. But if that were true, they would not be disturbed by them, but would comfortably identify with them, as does, turn the page, their Yetzer Hara. Okay, so there's a story that brings this point out that I was told actually during a Gemara shir once by my Gemara Rebbe. He was a Yerushalmi. In other words, he was born in Jerusalem. He's a big Talmid Chacham. He was anyhow. He was once talking about the difference in our generation versus previous generations, and he told us the story of Yankala. That's his name. His name, Yaakov today, but Yankala is just a Yiddish way of referring to Yaakov. And Yankala, he was a tailor. Back in the 1800s, when that was an honorable profession, and he would never consider taking more money from anybody than was due to him. And he had a certain amount of clientele, and people in those days didn't have computerized stuff, and you had maybe a book that you kept track of your sales, and they were not always perfect track. And people would come in and they'd come back later on for their orders, and they'd go away, and you would never see them again. And that's the way it was. And so one man, a wealthy patron, came in and he ordered a coat to be made for him. And he came back, and sure enough, on time was ready. And Yankala fitted him, and he made the corrections. And when he was finally finished, the man paid him and thanked him very much and went on his way. And after a couple of minutes after he left, he realized that he'd been overpaid. So the first thing he did was run on the street to find this man and give him back his money. That's what he wanted to do. He never thought twice about it. He never thought that, I can keep this money. But he couldn't find him. There's a crowd, and the man probably drove off in a chariot, and he didn't have one of his own. And it was the old days. It wasn't so simple. And so he thought to himself, he put the money on, off to the side, but never showed up, and he couldn't get the man's name. He couldn't find where he wrote it down, and after a while, he thought to himself, I'll give the money to tzedakah. It's just sitting around. I'll give it to tzedakah, and this way, the man will have the schus. So, as he goes to shul, and he's about to give tzedakah, so all of a sudden he hears a little voice say to him, Yankala, who wants the tzedakah of a thief? And he looks around, who said that? And he goes, again, Yankala, who wants the tzedakah of a thief? And he realizes it's coming from inside, not from outside. So he's like very disturbed, very upset. He's thinking, feels guilty. What's going on? So he goes up on his tefillin to daven, and he'll put the money, Yankala, who wants the tefillin of a thief? And he's so disturbed that he promised himself he's going to daven, finish davening. He's going to do whatever he has to go find the man. So, what's going on over here, right? If he's such a tzaddik, so how did he find himself in this position in the first place, right? If he's not a tzaddik, so why does he feel so guilty? The answer is that the body interferes. After a while, you can be completely charged and inspired to do the most fantastic thing. I'm going to go home and say all the Sefer Tehillim. I'm going to go home and I'm going to stay up half the night. I'm going to go to the basement and learn the entire night. And it sounds great, and you're so excited. And that's you. That's real. That's inspiration. But then the body kicks in. And it's very easy to confuse the body's desire for your own. Now, you have to pay attention to your body. You're responsible for it. There's no question. You have to know when you've reached your limitations and not rely upon miracles. But for the most part, people underachieve. The people who overachieve, they're the ones who have to be careful about taking care of themselves. But most of the time, people underachieve. They don't have no idea how much they're capable of doing and how much the body panics that we're not going to get enough sleep. We won't get enough to eat. It's like, you'll make up somehow. But that moment of inspiration where you actually carry through and do the thing you promise yourself, because if you don't, it starts to wear away at you. Well, who am I really anyhow? What's that driving force? So this idea of making the separation is really stage one. It's really what a person needs to learn how to do. When you're a child growing up, most of the things you do that are good and that are right, you see this, that the children are doing it all for approval. It's not that they buy into it. They're not a bar das yet. A bar das means literally the son of knowledge, right? And an owner of knowledge, or a bas das for a girl, right? It means that they've acquired that realization, that consciousness that allows them to personally relate to good and evil, to know what's right, to have that conscience. But they don't get that right away. On the contrary, when you're first born, you're completely Yetzer Hara. Yetzer Tov, your soul is bottled up. It's not a baby, but it's bottled up. The body can't do that much. It can't accomplish, it can't express itself, can't move around. So the soul, which is an adult, so to speak, is trapped inside the child's body. And then as you get older and older, hopefully the soul will have more of a role to play inside a person's life. But when you get to the age of bas mitzvah and bar mitzvah, at that point you're supposed to become a bar das, a bas das, where you finally realize that there's a Yetzer Hara and there's Yetzer Tov, and they're both inside of you. They're both inside of you, right? You're dealing with this reality of both of them inside of you, and your parents tell their children that's your Yetzer Hara, and okay. And they hear it, and they may know it, and they may think about it, but they don't really relate to what that means. It's my Yetzer Hara. Yes, it's mine. It belongs to me. Where'd I get it from? What is it? What's the purpose of it? What am I supposed to, I have to understand, the Gemara talks about, for example, how that at the time of the Second Temple, when idol worship was still a very prominent sin, it was a very hard thing to be. We don't relate to that today. It's hard for us to relate to the concept of worshiping, idols, stones. We have our own forms of idols. Money can easily be an idol, and is for so many people. So that we can relate to. But a wood statue, a stone statue, mountains, things like that. But it's not so clear that people themselves also didn't really. It was more of an addiction, and it was a driving force inside of people. So when Chazal, the rabbis of the Second Temple periods, they saw that people were not able to control that, so they prayed to God. They did a whole procedure to extricate the Yetzer Hara from mankind, at least for Avodah Zarah. That's specific idol worship of Yetzer Hara. And they were successful, the Gemara says. They were able to do it, and when they did that, it killed not only the Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah, but also for service of God, because they're one and the same thing, same drive. Because idol worship is really man's drive for God and spirituality without having to do the work. Because in order to connect to God, in order to be spiritual, you have to work on yourself. You have to grow spiritually. That means discipline. That means following the Torah. That means making sacrifices and being willing to separate yourself from the world of Gashmis and materialism to some degree. That's the process. The more you do it, the more you're able to do it, the more you're able to grow spiritually. But some people want their cake and eat it too, literally. They want to have that spirituality, but they also want to keep themselves well rooted in this world. So that Idol worship allows you to do that. The idols have no problem with that. You want, as one philosopher once said, idol worship is God made in the image of man. So it's like me, what I want, projecting onto God what he should be like, so I can be myself, and I make God to suit that. But that's not the real thing, and that's idol worship. It's cheating. It's not right. It destroys the person, destroys the world. So therefore, Chazal said, well, it's a terrible sacrifice to have to make, but it's much better than having idol worship. And so then people ask, so why can I connect to God? Why aren't I driven to relate to God and to have a relationship with him? Because that desire was taken away. So when Chazal saw that they were successful, they thought, well, the other major sin that we're having to deal with is illicit relationships. It's all over the world. I mean, today we pay millions of dollars, for people to do these things on movies and pay to watch it. Like, incredible how what the Torah says should not be taking place is everywhere in the open. And Chazal said, at least for the Jewish people, we got to do something about this. And they davened to take that away. But it turns out that even the chickens were affected, and no one laid an egg. No chicken laid an egg. We couldn't find eggs which were necessary to help cure people and all that. So Chazal asked for some of it to come back, some of the drive to come back, so we can have families. People can get married and have families. And so we see it's the same drive. But it's a question of who's in control, who's harnessing it. That's what Gemara says, that Hashem made the Yetzer Hara. He made it. It didn't come from nowhere. He specifically made it. In fact, the Gemara says that, or the Midrash says, every day of Ma'aseh Bereshis, God says, it says, V'hi Voker, or Yom Echad, Yom Sheni, right? It says, Hashem saw what he did. Hashem saw, right? Everything, it was good. And only one day, he says, Tov Ma'od, very good. And what day is that? Day 6. Why day specifically? Because that's the day he not only made the Yetzer Tov, because man was created, but the Yetzer Hara too. Both are necessary for the sake of free will. They operate, but you have to channel it. So guys, I'm not interested in killing the Yetzer Hara unless you do that after a lifetime, like David HaMelech did and Moshe Rabbeinu did and other great people. But a tavlin, the thing about a tavlin is a spice. People often translate the word tavlin in this context as an antidote, which it is, but it's not really the true expression. And the idea of a spice is to enhance. You spice things not to kill them, not to change the taste dramatically, but to bring out the taste, something in a positive way that's palatable and enjoyable. So Hashem says that I made the Yetzer Hara, but I made Torah as a tavlin, meaning that the Yetzer Hara is a drive. Ultimately speaking, we can talk about the Yetzer Hara philosophically, Kabbalistically, we will. And they're all important to know. But, to get right down to it, the essence of Yetzer Hara is bodily instinct. The body, it's knee-jerk reaction, so to speak, to the reality of the world that we live in. It's got a survival instinct. And that survival instinct means it's going to eat and it's going to want things because that's built into the body. The body has to do that. Otherwise, the soul doesn't care. The soul doesn't mind if we die. The faster we die, the faster it goes back to Shemayim where it doesn't die. The soul doesn't die. It goes back to Shemayim and it can't wait to go. So death for the body, for the soul, is no big deal. But the body has to live because that's a responsibility, because it's the only way we can do mitzvahs is with the body. So therefore, the body is the responsibility of the soul to take care of it. It gives it life and keeps it going, right? And it's supposed to direct it and guide it. And the body, for its part, it's just got built-in programming. It doesn't think. It acts first and asks, and maybe asks questions later. So, those drives are necessary for accomplishing great things, but they have to be channeled. And that's what the Torah is given to us for, to channel those drives. So the first stage in being able to go on that track, which is the path towards tzidkis, righteousness, personal fulfillment, even health, ultimately, because health, contrary to what people know or understand, at least, is based upon the closeness of one's body and their soul. Health is completely a function of the closeness of the soul to the body. Yeah, food and vitamins, but it's not the food themselves. Take healthy food and put it in the mouth of a dead person, and they're not going to come back to life again. It's not the food; it's what's inside the food. And what's inside the food? A spiritual element. When Moshe is on Mount Sinai, he says to God, he says to the Jewish people, he comes back down. He says, for 40 days and for 40 nights I didn't eat. Well, how'd you survive, Moshe? What was it like up there? If you didn't eat, what was keeping you going? Sparks, spiritual realities from the mouth of God. God, I didn't need the food to access them. Because of the chet, eitz hadas tov v'ra, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, we're in the physical world, embedded in it. Now it's like we have to get it through a messenger. Those holy sparks that keep our body and soul together comes through food, comes through various different things in the physical world, but it's not the food itself per se. So the more you're able to bring your soul closer to your body, the stronger and healthier the body becomes. So then why is it that people die anyhow, young, even though they're righteous, seemingly righteous? Why is it that righteous people get sick also? You're right. Good question. Good question. Not a hard question to answer. There's a few answers. One very simple answer, and that is because since we now live in a world that requires free will, if everybody who became a Baal Tshuva never got sick again the rest of their life, what would that tell you? We find a similar idea as well, right? that the Gemara says very specifically, it should be that if someone has a relationship that Torah bans, it should be that no children could be produced from it. That would be the ultimate. That would be the right thing to, there should be. It should be. You couldn't have children from any relationship but the right one. But that's not the way it works. We have mamzerim in this world. It can happen. Why? So Hashem says, the Gemara says, because if I didn't do that, then you'd understand that it is the way it is in the Torah, and you'd gravitate towards the Torah, not because it's the ultimate truth, but to save yourself, to accomplish something. The same way about Eretz Yisrael, exact same way. If everyone who moved to Eretz Yisrael automatically had parnassa, automatically had health, all their kids grew up straight and true the way it's supposed to be, then people would move here because this is the place to be. If there's a community where you have all the commodities that you need to have a great life, people move there. They're fighting to get in because that's the place you get these things. So therefore, Hashem works it out that you do get that brucha. Miracles do happen, and you get extra things for being in Israel as opposed to for being the diaspora. There's no question about that, but it's camouflaged. The person themselves, they might see it. They're allowed to see it. But everybody else has to looking, it's not quite clear that by moving there, he got this, he got as opposed to here. So this way they have bechira to also choose to live in Israel for the right reason. So this is a concept that comes across the board. But back to the main point, and this idea of birur, of separation, which is not just to do with personality and understanding who you are in essence. It has to do also just with history in general, because of the moment that Adam ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and Chava was the first one. So it says that everything became the level of the eitz hadas tov v'ra. Everything became a combination, including man. We have good and we have evil. It's in us, and every person. Just a question of how much and who follows what. So this idea of birur, which means separation, is something that's going on all levels. And I know I've mentioned this in the past, but it takes place in your digestive system. Your bodies do the exact same thing all the time. Taking in food, which is a combination of good stuff and bad stuff. Not evil per se, but it could cause evil. It starts to rot. Some people even die from certain foods. I mean, the tragedies and stories, they abound of things like that. And your body is responsible to separate the good from the bad. And it's got a whole system, whole marechet. It's an amazing thing, absolutely remarkable, amazing thing your body knows and recognizes which is the good, which is the bad, and uses the good to feed the body, give it its sparks, its nutrients, and get rid of the waste. Packages up and sends it out of the body. Everything's working fine. It's an amazing thing. It starts to break down, a person gets sick. Right? But this is the idea of birur, separation. And the starting point is being able to separate, distinguish between who you are in essence and your Yetzer Hara. Once you can do that, you're on your way to a much higher quality of life. So, creation itself was a process of birur. When Hashem made the world, Kabbalistically, this is what he did. He began with a spiritual pot, so to speak, of what's called sparks, holy sparks, and klipos, which are the reality of spiritual impurity, the source of evil in creation, and they're all mixed together like a chillum, all combined together. And when Hashem decided to make something, he extracted the sparks from that swamp of spiritual impurity, cleaned it off, so to speak, and then made something. And that brought creation much closer to perfection. Creation is not just called creation. In Hebrew, it's called tikkun ma'aseh bereshis, the rectification of the act of creation. It's a rectification. When the Torah begins, it's rectifying. You can't rectify something that's not broken. The story may sound like it begins there, but obviously something pre-existed the Torah talks about. And that is this. And how it got there, Shviras Kelim, that's a little bit deeper, part of the story. But the point was, at the very beginning, it talks about Olam Tohu, the world of Tohu. The earth was null and void. Tov v'vohu, it talks about. And the Tohu, based on the idea of Tohu, is this mixture of good and evil combined. And every time Hashem made something, he took it out, the sparks out of the waste, and built something positive. And therefore, that was more rectification, more tikkun. And then once that was all done, by day 6, he'd already done a tremendous amount of this. A lot of sparks had been taken out of the klipos at that point in time. And then he said to man, finish the job. Finish the job. And if Adam HaRishon had simply chosen, rejected, so to speak, the Yetzer Hara, that to eat from the Eitz Das Tov Ra, that would have been enough of a separation process to usher in the Messianic era. But he didn't do that, obviously. Here we are today. This is the result of that thousands of years later. And as a result of what he did, not only did he not complete the process of birur, of separation, he undid. I mean, take a look around. It's not Gan Eden. It's not the Garden of Eden. What is the Garden of Eden? It's not just some hotel resort somewhere that you go to where they spend a lot of money to make it feel like paradise. That's not even coming close to it. The real paradise is just a higher level of existence. It's here. It exists, but we can't perceive it because we're on such a low level. So that's the result of putting sparks back into that mixture, that swamp. Once again, it's like extracting from a hole, right? There's a building collapsed, and there's this a big, bunch of mangled metal and bricks and stones and all that. And someone comes along and says, "Hey, well, this is great. I can use this to build my own house." And he has to build a house, right? He takes one stone, another stone, more metal, and puts it in a plate, and he builds it best he possibly can. And some storm comes along and blows it all around, and the next thing he knows, it's all back at the pile once again. That's what Adam did with his chet. So not only do we have to go back and complete what we didn't complete, we actually have to redo what Hashem had done, but got undone by the chet of Adam HaRishon. So this process is taking place on all kinds of levels all the time, okay? And going further, right? So it says, every person is such a combination, which means that life itself is a process of birur, of separation, of separating the essence of who we are, excuse me, from what gets layered over it, not just within the world we live, but within the world that lives within us. So it says in Tehillim, right, happy is the man who has not followed the counsel of the wicked. This is the very first verse of Tehillim, one of the beautiful verses to start off with, or taken the path of sinners or joined the company of the insolent. Happy is that person. Happy is that person who didn't let the Yetzer Hara dictate to them who they are, what they want, following that instinct. They used Torah, whatever they had available to them. That's why chinuch, education, how you raise your children, is so crucial. In the Western world, in the secular world, most parents don't have much of an impact, hashpa, on their children. School takes care of that. Even though school doesn't really deal with philosophy of life, it deals more with trades and tricks, and skills, mathematics, geometry, drama, whatever. But it's not. What's life about? Why are we here? Maybe you'll have one teacher who might do that. You're lucky, and you won't even see that course like that in most colleges unless you decide to sign up for one, because it interests you or because it's an easy course to get a mark in. And yes, the most important thing of all. And the kids go to the streets because we need to know, we need to understand. So if parents are hands-on, then that child has a chance to know, while they're still learning, absorbing. And that's what the Torah starts from a very young age, 3 years old, 4 years old. We're just waiting for the first opportunity we have to teach this child something important about life and to build upon it and build upon. So by the time they're bar mitzvah, they're quite smart. They know a fair bit, and they're well educated in this concept of Yetzor Yetzor Tov. That's the ideal. And if that's the case, then they have a fighting chance. And that's what it takes, a fighting chance, because it's not easy. No, not at all. And this is what life comes down to every single day. And every single challenge that we have is a moral challenge. Right down to, do I brush my teeth or don't I brush my teeth? Do I brush my teeth well or I just do a superficial job? That's a moral decision too. Because God gave you teeth to take care of your health. Okay, it's a simple one, less consequential perhaps in the beginning until you have to go to the dentist to get your teeth fixed. Spend a lot of money later on down the road. But then there's more prominent ones. Who's right about life and how it should be lived, and who's wrong. What is morally correct and what is morally perverted. What's upside down, what's right upside down. Rabbi Shua ben Levi, the Gemara says, he had a son, and his son came close. He died. He actually died. They call it a near death, but he died. He just came back. When he came back, his father, understanding what had happened to him, said, "What did you see when you were there before you came back?" He said, "I saw an upside down world. What's up over there is down over here. What's down over there is up over here. It's upside down world." He said, "My son, you saw a clear world. You didn't see the world upside down. You saw the world upside down compared to the world you're used to living in. But down over here, we're the ones walking, upside down, and you saw the world the way it's supposed to be." This is a very deep point, that we'll probably come back to later on, B'ezras Hashem. But this is what affects us all the time. They have a story about the emperor that wore no clothes, for example, right? How easy it is for people. It's a mashal. It's a mashal for how people can be convinced that the reality that they're living in is the only one. It's the real one. It's the true one. And how everyone, gets conned into it without knowing what life is really about. And how many people go through life, all of us, without ever really finding out the truth about who we are in essence. We will, by the way, because before we die, that's what happens. Right before you die, they show you who you really are, or were, or meant to be. And they compare it to what you became. It's like, if you were working on it and you're good about this, then there's not much of a difference, and you'll be very joyous to find out that you were on the mark or close to it. But most people won't recognize themselves. That is the process of beer. So this is the essence of tshuva. Separation of our essence, identifying with it. This is the important thing about tshuva. Repentance. With few exceptions, every person's essence, their soul is good and holy. How far they live from this reality just depends upon how many layers of misidentification they live with. So rather, the teaching of God is this delight. What this is from? This is from also from Tehillim. This is actually a continuation from the previous pasuk. The first one was talking about how happy the person is who does not follow the counsel of the wicked. And the pasuk continued. The paragraph continues. Rather, the teaching of God is his delight, and he studies that teaching day and night. He's like a tree planted beside streams of water which yields its fruit in season, whose foliage never fades, and whatever it produces thrives. So there you have it, the first two psukim of Tehillim, first 2-3 psukim of Tehillim. David HaMelech lays out exactly what we're talking about. This is exactly the point he's making. Now, you wouldn't recognize it, wouldn't know necessarily. It just sounds like good advice. Be a tzaddik. Be a good person. Do what God says. Yeah, 100%. So why do so many people have difficulty doing that? Why is there such resistance? Why do I struggle to get out of bed in the morning to get to minyan? Why do I struggle to have kavanah? Why don't I even try sometimes? And all the other things I might do that are shortcomings compared to what I'm supposed to be. And every once in a while we shine. Every once in a while, for some reason, especially if you're trying to improve yourself, God gives you opportunities. But every once in a while we do something, or something happens to bring out the side of ourselves that very rarely gets a chance to come out. And we're like, wow, I'm like that. I do that kind of a thing. Yeah, story of a person, he's a teenager. And he's walking across the road, and there's a woman struggling with her bags, an older woman, and it's very hard for her. And he sees that the light's about to change to red, and people see her. They're walking right by her. No one's stopping to do anything. And he says to himself, "That's not right." And he says to himself, I got to go help her out. I mean, I'm a little late for my next appointment. I need to help her out. And he goes over and he says, can I give you a hand? And she looks at him, and her eyes say it all. And so he takes the bags and he helps her cross the road, and they get to the other side when it's safe. It's already changed, but the cars are forced to wait for her, but they're patient and they see what's going on and what's happening. And he gets to the side, and when he feels that she's, firmly on the sidewalk and she's safe, then he says to her, I hope you're okay and have a good day. And she thanks him profusely because she's so grateful for the for the help that he gave her. And he walks away, and he feels so good because he's done a chesed. We all, do a chesed, he feels good, but he feels good for a different reason, or an additional reason. As he's walking away, it's like he met himself in a way he didn't quite recognize, and he says to himself, it's nice to know I'm actually a good person inside. A lot of people saw this woman struggling, and they chose not to stop. They chose to look and walk away, and I, without even thinking twice, I didn't like double think, second guess. I just thought, no, this is what I got to do. And I went over there naturally and helped her to the side, and I was patient, I was kind, and, wow, I didn't know I had that in me. What do you mean? That's who you are. You did it. Yeah, but it doesn't come out all the time. Why not? So this is what we're exploring. This is what we understand. But at the end of the process, I can't even begin to tell you how much it improves the quality of your life, and more importantly, the quality of your relation with the Kodesh Baruch Hu and this world around you. And it explains so much. It's not just simply working yourself to make yourself better. It's being a better instrument on behalf of God to make this world a better place. It's all part of that. The world would do this. This is what the Messianic year is going to look like. God willing, not too far away. Okay. Shabbat shalom. Source Tavis.
Rabbi, thank you so much. That was amazing, and a lot to consider and a lot to think about. I do have a question. I wasn't sure if it was you or for someone else that I heard in the shiur recently that says when you go up to Shemayim, aside from the obvious questions like did you yearn for the geula and all the other things, honest in your practice and making time for Torah and so on. My picture's back. There's a pasuk that people say I've learned this long ago because I didn't go to seminary. I didn't have a Jewish education so late, not till I was an adult. Somebody said that, there's a pasuk that goes along with your name, and you should, with the first letter of your name and your last letter of your name, and you look up what pasuk that is, that Tehillim that is, and then you have to memorize that. So that's what you have to know when you get up there. Did you ever hear such a thing?
Not only did I hear such a thing, and not only do I use this thing.
Wow.
But if you go look at the back of the art scroll, Siddur,
right,
they have a page with all the different psukim that apply to your name, so you can actually know. It's not, most just do for the first part of their name. Some do it for the full name. In other words, if you have you're so-and-so Ben or Bas so-and-so, so there might be 5 things to memorize, but the first 2 are sufficient. And if you only have one name, you only have one pasuk memorized. Yeah, but this is a reality. This is the shla I think it is. The Shla, who else? One of the Mekubalin bring it down. It's a good thing to do. Yeah, they say.
Thank you. Okay. All right, everybody, have a wonderful Shabbat. Thank you for joining us again, Rabbi, giving us your precious time away from your family. Have a good Shabbat yourself, good Shabbos. And Hashem should end the war today, protect our soldiers, bring our hostages home. Thank you all for joining us. And please share this with your friends. Look at 36.org, Rabbi Winston's website. Look at Josh Wander's website, which is israeltorah.org. You can see me on the Miriam Project Geula Hour on SoundCloud. I have recordings, and also on Facebook page, the Miriam Project Geula Hour. And we do what we can to try to alert people to the fact that the Geula is not only coming, but it's probably coming very soon. So please pass this on to your friends and people who joined us for the replay. Thank you so much. Have a great Shabbos, everybody. Happy and healthy Shabbos.